Sept Master, not bad. Li Daokong began to talk about his experiences over the years and subconsciously revealed a proud expression. After a long time, Hanju sighed. Not bad. As expected of the person I like the most. Li Daokong was so excited that his face turned red. He knelt down again and cupped his fists. Thank you for thinking highly of me, Sept Master. Hanju asked, do you want me to preach the Tao? Li Daokong immediately nodded. He would disdain to listen if it was any other mighty figure. However, Hanju was different. He was the strongest in the chaos. Without knowing the Tao creator, Li Daokong felt that Hanju was the peak of cultivation. Hanju sat down, and Li Daokong meditated. This dream lasted for 100 years. Hanju opened his eyes and sighed when the dream ended. How wonderful! Hanju smiled and continued cultivating. The ultimate origin chi already occupied 80% to 90% of ultimate origin world. Before long, there would only be ultimate origin chi in the ultimate origin world and no more nebulous primordial chi. Hanju decided to enter seclusion for 5 million years. A million years later, the ultimate origin world was filled with ultimate origin chi and there was no more nebulous primordial chi. Every million years, new opportunities would appear in the ultimate origin world, causing Hanju's cultivation level to constantly increase. In the blink of an eye, the 5 million years of seclusion came to a close. Hanju opened his eyes. A glint flashed across his red eyes. He felt the ultimate origin world's heaviness even though it was still in the depths of his soul. Apart from the 3,000 great Tao that formed the order, Hanju discovered that the ultimate origin world itself also nurtured an exclusive transcendent rule. This rule concerned the entire ultimate origin world. Even he couldn't forcefully control it. The ultimate origin world would shatter if he interfered with this rule without permission. This was only for him, the creator. If it was an enemy, they would not be able to sense the existence of this transcendent rule. Hanju inexplicably thought of the transcendent rule of the chaos. It was the rule that restricted talent and creation, preventing his bloodline from being passed down 100%. The two were similar. Hanju still couldn't figure out why this transcendent rule was so powerful. Father, you're awake. Come and spar? I've already attained the Great Tao Supreme. I'm really strong now. Hanling said excitedly, causing Hanju to raise his eyebrows. She have 10 million? Hanju was interested. Come, try it. Hanling smiled and said, you have to be careful. Even my second brother from the chaotic assembly was easily defeated by me in the simulation trial. Hanju smiled. The father and daughter entered the simulation trial. As expected, Hanling directly summoned 10 million Emperor soldiers. They all had herdermic powers and were equivalent to 10 million Great Tao Supremes. Hanju directly used the ultimate origin soul oblivion to suppress her. The entire process took less than a breath of time. Hanling opened her eyes and wailed, looking like a cute daughter. Hanju smiled and said, you still have to cultivate. Never give in to me. This is the goal of your cultivation. If I really can't suppress you one day, I'm afraid you won't be by my side anymore. Hanju smiled and denied it. He then asked, Linger, do you want to go out for a walk after cultivating for 10 million years? Hanling shook her head. I've been there before. I know that I'm not fated with the chaos. Hanju didn't insist. By the way, your fifth brother has already developed 10 generations of offspring in the immortal world. Do you want to take a look? Hanju asked. Hanling looked at him and said, Father, are you going out of seclusion? You little girl. All right. I'll personally bring you to travel the myriad worlds and meet the descendants of our Han family after I break through. Hanju chuckled, very satisfied with Han Ling's attitude. Among his children, only Han Ling had the same personality as him and had always been cultivating diligently. Hanju stood up and went to visit the women. After all, they were his Tao companions. He couldn't ignore them. Several decades later, Hanju left the second Tao field and came to the 100-peak Immortal River. He entered Fairy Xixian's Taoist temple. Usually, no disciple dared to disturb them because Li Xianao and Han Zuetian felt that they had a close relationship with Hanju and strictly forbade disciples from being rude. Fairy Xixian was disturbed from her cultivation. At first, she didn't care and thought that it was an illusion. After Hanju repeated it, she suddenly opened her beautiful eyes and hurriedly said, "Come in." The door opened and Hanju stepped in. The door closed. Fairy Xixian was a little stunned upon looking at the handsome Hanju. Ju saw her. "Please sit." Fairy Xixian waved her hand, and a mat appeared in front of her. Hanju sat down and asked with a smile, "Long time no see. How have you been?" Fairy Xixian replied, "It's naturally good to be in the Tao field. I don't have any worries now. Instead, I feel that longevity is a little boring." "What?" Fellow Taoist Xixian wants to descend into the mortal world and experience the suffering of the world? You're joking. Fairy Xixian shook her head and laughed. She stared at him and asked, "Why haven't you returned for 10 million years? I thought you had already forgotten about the 100-peak Immortal River." Hanju said, "To you, 10 million years is a long time, but I've only entered seclusion twice. It's like 2 dreams." Fairy Xixian sighed in her heart. She sighed not because of Hanju's perception of time, but because his cultivation attitude had never changed, just like when the two of them first met. They continued to chat. It was calm, but not awkward. Anyway, Hanju felt very. Fairy Xixian was like an old friend of his. Her attitude didn't change because of his cultivation. Only Fairy Xixian was like this among his friends. She seemed to be like this forever, having no desires. After chatting for several hours, Hanju prepared to leave. His heart skipped a beat. Looking at Fairy Xixian's beautiful face, he smiled and said, "Do you have any wishes or needs? I'll satisfy you. Now, I can help you obtain whatever you want. After this farewell, I'll definitely continue my seclusion. It might." Fairy Xixian was stunned. Hanju wasn't in a hurry and waited for her to make a request. He noticed that Changyuer was not in the Taoist temple next door. From the remnant aura, she had left for tens of thousands of years. "Then preach the Tao to me. My cultivation has not improved at all in the past million years." Fairy Xixian muttered. Hanju nodded, but he felt inexplicably disappointed inside. He began to preach the Tao, and Fairy Xixian listened carefully. This lecture lasted for 1,000 years. Hanju quietly left after Fairy Xixian broke through a minor realm. Then, he directly immersed himself in cultivation after returning to the third Tao field. He yearned for this true undying and indestructible realm. Furthermore, the Tao Creator realm was not his ultimate goal. 10,000 years passed. The universe of stars in the third Tao field became filled with life, and the cultivation wind also flourished. It was just like the immortal world back then. In the blink of an eye, another 5 million years passed. Detected that you are 30 million years old and your life has taken another step forward. You have the following choices. 1. establish the primordial chaos in the chaos. You can obtain a primordial fragment, a great Tao fragment, a creation spirit stone, and a heavenly Tao spirit stone. 2. Cultivate in a low-profile manner and maintain your original intention. You can obtain a primordial fragment, a great Tao fragment, a creation spirit stone, and a supreme treasure. You have obtained a creation heaven's chosen attempt. It was similar to when he was 20 million years old, but there was an additional supreme treasure in the second option. You chose to cultivate in a low-profile manner and maintain your original intention. You obtained a primordial fragment, a great Tao fragment, a creation spirit stone, and a supreme treasure. You have obtained the ultimate Tao treasure. World-piercing divine origin Bao, world-piercing divine origin Bao, ultimate Tao treasure, born from the ultimate origin Qi. It contains the power to shatter the great Tao world and can recognize a soul as its owner. The owner is not allowed to use other ultimate Tao treasures in the future. Ultimate Tao treasure, not bad, not bad. It was very powerful to be able to shatter the great Tao world. However, the last note made him dissatisfied. This uniqueness did not suit him. He would keep it for now. It didn't matter if he used it or not. With his strength, it was not difficult to destroy a great Tao world as long as no Tao creator stopped him. Hanju didn't take out his Dharma treasure but continued cultivating. The Tao creator realm was right in front of him. At this moment, the entire ultimate origin Qi was red. Countless galaxies were dotted in this sea of ultimate origin Qi and were extremely stable. The ultimate origin world began to produce living beings on its own, surprising the chaotic fiend celestials who wanted to create living beings but failed. Sensing that he was about to break through, Hanju said, "Linger, go out for a while." Hanling was stunned. After so many years, this was the first time her father had asked her to go out. She didn't ask further and immediately stood up to leave. Hanju was the only one left in the Taoist temple. A red pattern appeared between his eyebrows as if his flesh had been torn apart. A black and red ball of light flew out. Ultimate origin world. Every great Tao world had its transcendent rule. This rule contained the truth of the 3,000 great Tao and the profundity of the autonomous great Tao world. It could allow any existence to be born and also eliminate the unstable elements in the great Tao world. It was almost omnipotent. This was the divine rule of creation. It seemed very close, but it still needed some time. Nearly 100,000 years later, the divine rule of creation was successfully condensed. 1,000,000 years later, the divine rule of creation controlled the ultimate origin world and connected to the 3,000 great Tao. 500,000 years later, Hanju fused with the divine rule of creation. He began to break through. 100,000 years later, Hanju successfully broke through. His dharmic powers began to undergo a qualitative change. It was the same for his body and soul. This transformation process took 100,000 years. Hanju was in a sublime state. His consciousness covered the entire ultimate origin world. Although the ultimate origin world was not as big as the chaos, it was already very vast. Everything in every corner of the world entered his vision. In an instant, he could pay attention to countless corners at the same time. This vision was extremely magical. It was not as simple as multitasking, but doing trillions of things at once. No wonder the ninth chaos could easily revive all living beings in the chaos. After a certain period of time, Hanju opened his eyes. His body had already transformed into the ultimate origin Qi like a red and black shadow. Detected that you have broken through to the Tao creator realm. You have the following choices. 1. Place the ultimate origin world in a blank domain. You can obtain 5 creation heavens chosen attempts. 2. Keep a low profile and continue to hide the ultimate origin world in your soul. you can obtain a supreme treasure. That's it? Hanju was very disappointed, but the first option was too dangerous. He might be suppressed by the ninth chaos if he took it out. Perhaps he could already resist the ninth chaos, but if that was the case, there would be endless trouble. How could he cultivate? As for the creation heavens chosen, he could rely on time to accumulate more. Hanju silently chose the second option. You chose to cultivate in a low-profile manner and obtained a supreme treasure. You have obtained the ultimate supreme treasure, Supreme Tao Heavenly Wheel of Creation. Supreme Tao Heavenly Wheel of Creation, ultimate supreme treasure. It can attack and defend at the same time. It contains the strongest defense known to exist. It is indestructible and can devour the power of karma. Awesome! Ultimate supreme treasure. Hanju's heart beat faster. He had made a killing. The strongest defense sounded impressive. Hanju didn't take out this supreme treasure. Instead, he began to consolidate his cultivation and checked his attributes panel. Name, Hanju. Lifespan, 3,180,000,128,12,999,199,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999,999 万9999 999兆9999亿9999万9999 999兆9999亿9999万9999 Race, ultimate origin fiend celestial, immeasurable emperor. Cultivation, early stage Tao creator, perfect sage. Technique, primordial chaos reincarnation great Tao, heavenly cycle body tempering. Great Tao of life and death, great Tao of karma, great Tao of extreme origin. Constitution, extreme Tao ultimate origin body. His lifespan was so long. How satisfying. Honshu couldn't be bothered to calculate how many years there were. He only knew that he could live for a long time. This was the lifespan of his origin. Even if he only had a year of normal lifespan left, Honshu could use the rules of time to extend this year indefinitely, as if he could live forever. The meaning of origin lifespan was karma. Many methods could hurt it. Honshu's cultivation finally stabilized after 50,000 years. After consolidating his cultivation, the first thing Honshu did was challenge the formless transcendent deity. As for those sword Tao mystical powers, he couldn't be bothered to improve them. He could dominate everything with the divine might Great Heaven Pong, the ultimate origin Heaven Seal, and the ultimate origin Soul Oblivion. Indeed. Instant kill. There was no doubt about it. In the same realm, there was no reason for Honshu to lose to the formless transcendent deity. However, this was only a simulation trial. It could only determine his victory. In reality, the Tao Creator was undying. The Tao Creator was eternal if the divine rule of creation was not destroyed. Only the master of the great Tao world could sense its existence, and it could be separated from the great Tao world, so it was impossible to target. Honshu kept simulating the trial. He challenged 10 formless transcendent deities at once. It was barely enough. It had to be said that the formless transcendent deity was indeed powerful. The mysterious powers restriction was extremely strong. Unfortunately, it couldn't break through Honshu's defense. He took out the Supreme Tao Heavenly Wheel of Creation and started to make it recognize him as its owner. This ultimate supreme treasure was a golden wheel that could change size freely. After recognizing him as its master, the Supreme Tao Heavenly Wheel emitted a dazzling golden light and flew behind him. It was very imposing. Honshu sized himself up and was very satisfied with his current appearance. He called Hanling back into the Taoist temple after hiding the ultimate origin world in the depths of his soul. Hanling hurriedly asked after she entered. Father, you broke through? What realm are you at now? Hanju said, it's just a small breakthrough. It's still the Great Tao Supreme Realm. Hanling nodded. Just like when the ninth chaos appeared, Hanju couldn't even see him. Hanju didn't say anything else and started to check his emails. He had not read emails for so many years and did not know what his circle of friends was like. Your good friend, the ultimate god of punishment, was attacked by a mysterious mighty figure. Your son Han Huang has entered the consciousnessless Great Tao world. Your good friend Li Daokong established a world. Your disciple Dao Sovereign was attacked by demons. X1039982222, your disciple. Your grand disciple Murong Qi has fused with the Great Tao of War and stepped into the extraordinary realm. Your good friend Pango has revived. Your disciple Jiang Juesher has entered the chaotic crack. There were many opportunities and attacks. However, from the opportunities and maps involved, they had all grown. Hanju was very glad that he was not the only one growing. After reading the emails, he pondered if he should go out for a walk. In any case, the next breakthrough would definitely take more than 30 million years. He didn't care about decades. However, he had to think about how to deal with the divine rule of creation before leaving. Other than placing it in the ultimate origin world, he could also split it up and hide it in different places to ensure that he would not die. He could leave a wisp of each of the 3 Tao fields and find a place in the chaos to leave a wisp. The blank domain was also a good choice. The divine rule of creation was extremely powerful. The normal operation of the ultimate origin world would not be affected even if he split it into 100 million portions. After making up his mind, Hanju directly used his will to control the 3 wisps of the divine rule of creation to be placed into 3 Tao fields. He stood up and asked, I want to go out for a walk. Do you want to go? Hanling was stunned. She hurriedly stood up and said, I'll follow wherever father goes. Qinling had no objections and sat down again. 80 years later, Hanju brought Hanling to the heavenly Tao. The two of them suppressed their cultivation. The cultivation of the heavenly Tao was not as high as theirs, so it was naturally easy for them to enter. Hanju didn't alarm the heavenly Tao sages as he brought Hanling around the immortal world. Outside the 33rd heaven, in the Universal Hall, more than 1,000 heavenly Tao sages stayed here. Heavenly Venerate Shen Du sat at the head of the table and faced all the sages. The scene was quite spectacular. The heavenly Tao had changed drastically after more than 20 million years. There were more than 2 great Tao sages alone, and 1/5 of them were freedom sages. The scale of the heavenly Tao also doubled, causing every heavenly Tao sage to have a territory to manage. However, the Divine Might Heavenly Sage didn't appear for a long time. The new sages had never seen Hanju, and he was already regarded as a legend. Heavenly Venerate Shen Du knew how to behave. Every time he held the sage meeting, he would always leave a map beside him. It was Hanju's location and told the new sages that the Divine Might Heavenly Sage was still around. Chao Shilai snorted. The Panga race has reunited and the news has even spread to the heavenly Tao. Giant God Panga probably has other thoughts. Pan Xian smiled. Indeed. After all, the heavenly Tao is so powerful, but the current heavenly Tao can't return to him. The Tao ancestor also can't even if he revives. However, he's our ancestor, after all. We can't lose our etiquette. In the past million years, Panga had wantonly created worlds and living beings. It was unknown if these living beings were lucky or it was on purpose, but they began to visit the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao was open to trade and had always been open to chaotic life forms. The other sages also expressed their opinions. They were almost all wary of Pango. Most of them were living beings born after the heavenly Tao restarted. They didn't have a deep impression of Pangu. In their understanding, the creation god was the Divine Might Heavenly Sage. If not for the Divine Might Heavenly Sage, the heavenly Tao would have perished several times. After chatting about Pangu, Feng Liang said, "Recently, the conflict between the Han family and the Flying Heaven sect has been intensifying. This matter has to be resolved to prevent a huge problem." Heavenly Venerate Xian Du asked, "What's Han Yunjin's attitude?" Feng Liang said, "He's in seclusion. The current family head doesn't want to let this go. Although this matter was caused by the younger generation, the price the Han family paid was too heavy. He won't be able to face his clansmen if he lets this go." Heavenly Venerate Xian Du frowned. "The Flying Heaven sect has produced many geniuses, including sages. We can't disappoint them," Zhang Guxing added. With that said, more than 10 sages nodded and looked at him gratefully. The South Extreme Heavenly Venerate said in a strange tone, "Are there too few geniuses in the Han family? They've hundreds of Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals. Furthermore, the Han family has many branches. They will also be a considerable force if they join forces." The new sages were silent. The forces involved were powerful. They didn't dare to interrupt rashly to avoid offending their seniors. Heavenly Venerate Wufa said, "No matter what, this matter has to be settled to prevent it from affecting the situation in the immortal world. Why don't we sages take out some treasures to make up for it and let them resolve their karma?" Longhao said, "My junior Han has a strong personality. He said that he wants to see the sect master of the Flying Heaven sect and make it clear in person. I'm afraid the matter will intensify if the sages interfere." Ji Xianshen said, "Then let them meet. Didn't the Flying Heaven sect master call himself a hero of the heavenly Tao? Doesn't he have the guts to meet the other party?" Heavenly Venerate Xian Du frowned even more. Clearly, this was not only a battle between the Han family and the Flying Heaven sect but also a battle between two factions. The Flying Heaven sect was jointly established by the second-generation sages. It had a 20-million-year history and a deep foundation. It controlled thousands of mortal worlds, so it was naturally arrogant. Although the Han family was related to the Divine Might Heavenly Sage, there was more than one Han family among the Divine Might Heavenly Sage's descendants. The Flying Heaven sect's reputation would be severely damaged if they lowered their heads every time Hanju was mentioned. The older generation of sages opposed each other and argued endlessly. As time passed, the new sages also began to take sides. Heavenly Venerate Xian Du felt a headache. He missed the atmosphere when the Divine Might Heavenly Sage presided over the Heavenly Tao. Who dared to say they were anxious under the Divine Might Heavenly Sage's eyes? However, as time passed, the Divine Might Heavenly Sage's image in his mind inexplicably became blurry. He couldn't even remember his true name. In the end, Heavenly Venerate Xian Du said, "Let the Flying Heaven sect master and the head of the Han family meet at the peak of Buzhou Divine Mountain. Sage Han Yu, you have to go personally to prevent chaos." Han Yu nodded. Speaking of which, the Han family's master was of the same generation as him, but the difference in cultivation between the two was too great. They had never met. The expressions of the sages changed slightly. They felt that Heavenly Venerate Xian Du was biased towards the Han family, but facing Han Yu, they did not dare to act recklessly. Although Han Yu was a calm person, his grand disciple, Qin Ling, was not to be trifled with. He had a fiery personality. A sage once spoke ill of Han Yu. Qin Ling immediately hunted him down when he heard of it. A sage would have died if not for the older generation standing up. After this matter was settled, another sage mentioned another important matter. This was the Universal Hall. Once the sages gathered, it would definitely take a long time to settle things. Hanju and his daughter were like transcendent immortals, so they naturally attracted a lot of attention. However, no one came to cause trouble for the time being. Scam? Hanju smiled. What does it have to do with us? Just take it as joining in the fun. Let's go! The father and daughter went up the mountain and stopped at a stone pavilion. This mountain was majestic and one could look down on the nearby mountains and rivers. From here, he could see a Taoist temple located halfway up a mountain. In front of the temple was a dam platform with dozens of cultivators sitting. There were also cultivators in the nearby mountains. It was a spectacular scene. Hanju waited for the immortal to preach the Tao while preparing to use the creation heavens chosen. Activating the creation heavens chosen. A random great creation will appear among your descendants. Your descendant Han Yi has awakened an innate great creation ultimate killing star. Ultimate killing star, born with the soul of the killing star, he is arrogant by nature. The more he kills, the stronger his cultivation. He cannot tolerate any providence of heaven and earth. Ultimate killing star? Hanju was secretly curious. He began to deduce Han Yi. This fellow was not Han Yunjin's descendant, but Han Yu's. Their bloodlines were thousands of generations apart and had already deviated from the main family. He was born in a village in the mortal world. His parents were farmers and he did not know the origins of his ancestors. Han Yi was only 2 years old and was undergoing a great change. Hanju asked in his mind, between the ultimate killing star and the primordial emperor star, who is stronger? Hanju was interested in Han Yi. He decided to visit him in a few years. Several years was a very short time for Hanju. In the wilderness, a youth with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes walked as if he was flying. In front of him was a wild boar that was taller than an adult. Bastard! You've invaded my garden. Where are you running? The youth leaped and landed on the wild boar's back. He waved his small fist. Boom! The wild boar instantly fell to the ground. Its fat head smashed into the ground, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Blood splattered everywhere. The youth was not appeased and continued to punch. The wild boar quickly died. He stood up and grinned. Then, he carried the wild boar back to his house. The difference in size between the two was huge and visually shocking. After returning to the village, the youth threw the wild boar at the entrance, attracting the attention of the villagers. Han Yi is really powerful. TSK, the power of a 9-year-old is so terrifying. It's like a devil master descending from the heavens. Well done. This wild boar deserves to die. Ha ha ha, Han Yi, can you share the meat? TSK, I killed a huge worm last time. This time, I killed a wild boar as big as a carriage. It's too ferocious. Han Yi placed his hands on his hips and laughed. You can all split up the meat. Send the right thigh to my house. With that, he rushed towards the mountain on the left of the village. He was like an ape in the forest, quickly traveling. He arrived at a valley after traveling for more than 10 kilometers. The entrance of the valley was covered in vines and weeds. At first glance, it was very difficult to find a path here. Han Yi rushed in directly. After entering the mountain pass, there was a small wooden house. In front of the wooden house was a lake with green waves. A young man and woman were fishing in front of the lake. The woman was as beautiful as a flower and could cause the downfall of a city. The man was even more handsome and had a more immortal aura than the woman. Han Yi approached them and said excitedly, "Immortal masters, I killed a very big wild boar today. Didn't you see that the wild boar was as big as this wooden house? I killed it with 3 punches and 2 kicks." Hanju glanced at him and smiled. "Has your strength increased?" Han Yi nodded excitedly and clenched his fists. "Immortal masters, the luck technique you taught me is too powerful. My strength actually increased after killing the wild boar." Han Ling frowned but did not say anything. Hanju smiled and asked, "You came to tell us this?" Han Yi scratched his head and chuckled. Immortal masters, I want to kill more evil beasts to increase my strength, but there are too few evil worms in the forest within 100 miles. What should I do? All you know is to kill. You're so fierce at such a young age. Han Ling scolded him, scaring Han Yi. He had known this pair of immortal masters for half a month. He was most afraid of Han Ling because she had never given him a good attitude. Han Yi looked at Han Ju pitifully. Although he was only 9 years old, Han Yi looked about 13 or 14 years old. His appearance was not at all similar to Han Ju, but he indeed had his bloodline. Han Ju smiled and said, I'll teach you a fist technique. You don't have to kill them to increase your strength. Go back and cultivate for a few months. Come and find us when you master the technique. Then, he raised his hand and pointed without waiting for him to answer. Han Yi trembled and immediately fell into a daze. He had already returned home when he woke up. A memory appeared in his mind. He worshipped Han Ju even more. He was really an immortal master. In the valley, Han Ling asked in confusion, Father, do you like him so much? Han Ju smiled. Can't I? Although he's a descendant of our bloodline, the difference in seniority is too great. He's like a stranger to us. Furthermore, this child is violent by nature. I can't see any good in him. Han Ling shook her head. Han Ju thought to himself. It seemed that the chosen ones couldn't sense each other. Han Ling could sense Jiang Jueshi's great creation because the primordial emperor star was superior. Han Ju smiled and said, although he enjoys killing, he's still very good to the village. How can the path of cultivation not have killing sins? You haven't experienced it, and that's because we're here. If not for me, you would have to fight with others just for a safe place to cultivate. Han Ling fell silent. She felt that it made sense, but she still didn't like Han Yi. His potential is average. Why do you have to take care of him like this? Han Ling asked. Han Yi had yet to start cultivating. What Han Ju taught were all body tempering techniques. The ultimate killing star was not as bright as the primordial emperor star. The primordial emperor star was outstanding from the beginning. However, the ultimate killing star was different. It needed to be tempered by killing. The more he killed, the stronger Han Yi became. He would probably be the strongest when he killed all living beings. Such potential was actually a threat to Han Ju, but he was not afraid. In terms of threat, anyone could grow up. However, he could never be threatened with the primordial heavenly prison and his cultivation attitude. Han Yi was different from the other children. He was a creation heaven's chosen. Only one had appeared after 10 million years of accumulation. Han Ju naturally had to meet every one of them and build his foundation in advance. Otherwise, it would probably be troublesome if he became stronger in the future and didn't acknowledge the ancestor. How to rope them in was to help these chosen ones attain the Tao when they were insignificant. This way, others could say that it was all thanks to the divine might heavenly sage when they rose in the future. They wouldn't think they were the chosen ones. His potential is extraordinary. You will understand in the future, Han Ju said meaningfully. Was this girl jealous? It was not like this usually. Han Ju smiled and didn't say anything else. Han Ling snorted. She wanted to see how high Han Ye's achievements were. Several months later, Han Yi arrived and said excitedly, Immortal Master, I've already learned it. I'll show it to you. He walked in front of Han Ju and started to punch. His punches were fierce and his muscles and bones roared like leopards. He had the aura of a human-shaped ferocious beast. Han Ling was disdainful, but she did not mock him directly. After all, the other party was still a child. Han Ju smiled and asked, Then, do you want to be stronger than me? Han Yi chuckled. Of course. But don't worry. You treat me well. I'll protect you after I'm stronger than you in the future. Hanling couldn't help but laugh at him. Brat, do you know who he is? Hanling secretly felt good. Hanju smiled and said, do you know about cultivators? Although you know some moves, you're still inferior to those cultivators. I'm not a true immortal and can't teach you much. Hanyi nodded. I know. 2 years ago, a cultivator passed by and turned stone into gold. He made the blind date in the village extremely excited. I've long told father that when I grow up, I'll marry and have children. I'll pursue the path of cultivation after I leave them with him. I can also reward them with longevity and wealth if I can attain the Tao before the two of them die of old age. A look of anticipation appeared on his face. Hanju smiled and nodded. Hanling snorted. You're really cheerful. You can even give up your filial duty to your son. Hanyi was born proud. He didn't dare to offend Hanling before, but he didn't allow her to mock him like this. Humph, what about you? How much have you done? Hanyi asked mockingly. She suddenly realized that she had only received her father's protection and had not been filial. Hanyi said disdainfully, then, why did you leave your father now? Hanling frowned. I've never left him. You really know how to. Hanyi started cursing, but then he suddenly stopped. Could it be? He stared harder. He couldn't help but look at Hanju and saw him nodding with a smile. Speechless, Hanyi asked, Immortal Master, how old are you? He thought that Hanju and Hanling were husband and wife and looked about the same age. Hanju smiled and said, since you're here, you must have something to ask of me. However, I have nothing to teach you anymore. Hanyi panicked. He couldn't be bothered to be surprised by Hanju's age. He knelt down and started to kowtow. Hanju didn't stop him. He should kowtow. Hanju took out a bow when Hanye's forehead turned red. Then, a cold light appeared and illuminated the sky. Even the 33rd heaven shook, startling the sages out of seclusion. Hanju quickly suppressed the world-piercing divine origin bow and placed many restrictions on it. Hanling stared at the world-piercing divine origin bow with her beautiful eyes burning. What a domineering Dharma treasure! She wanted it! Father, Hanling was about to speak when she was interrupted. Hanju stared at Hanyi and asked, Yealer, do you like this bow? Hanyi looked up and was instantly stunned by the world-piercing divine origin bow. He nodded desperately. Hanling pouted in anger and turned her head away. Hanju threw the world-piercing divine origin bow to the ground and said, This bow is yours, but you have to take it yourself. Hanyi hurriedly went forward and grabbed the bow. His expression changed. He couldn't hold it. He tried his best. His face turned red, but he still could not lift it. Hanju stood up and said, Year, we're leaving. When we meet again, the world will definitely change. Perhaps you won't remember my appearance. Hanyi looked up and asked anxiously, Immortal Master, where are you going? With that, Hanju waved his sleeve and disappeared with Hanling. The valley became quiet. This immortal method stunned Hanyi. Unfortunately, he did not receive any reply. Hanju and Hanling rode on the clouds. Hanling said unhappily, How can you give such a treasure to that brat? Besides, if we give it to him, why don't we accept him and bring him around to cultivate? Aren't you afraid that others will snatch it? Hanju smiled. No! He could tell that Hanling was dissatisfied, but he did not explain. Hanling would not hate him for this. Time would prove his actions and would definitely surprise her. Hanju still had one more creation heaven's chosen attempt. He thought for a moment and decided to use it. Hanju silently chose to activate the creation heavens chosen. Activating the creation heavens chosen. a random great creation will appear among your descendants. Your descendant Hanyao has awakened an innate great creation Conquest Heavenly Star. Conquest Heavenly Star, born with the Tao of Conquest. He will fight all his life and never stop fighting. He can conquer all rules, karma, providence, and so on to increase his chi of conquest.